Hello. Hey, what's up? I can't hear how loud I'm talking now. Let me check it because I'm wearing these special new headphones that I got. They're so clean and brand new. They're these headphones I got. You can, if you tune into the video cast, then you'll get a little taste of what that looks like. In fact, you'll get to see it. I wish I could tell you on how unenthusiastic I was all the time, but my enthusiasm is ripe for the picking today, as it is every day. My own enthusiasm is going to blow my mind in ways that I can't conceive of once again, and you're going to benefit from it. And not everybody can, but I just, for the moment, I've been given new life with these headphones, um, and it's just a matter of my important speaking voice versus somebody else's, versus the person next door, versus the opportunity cost. You could choose another person to listen to, and comparatively speaking, hopefully I'm better enough that you would spend some time listening to my important voice, because my important voice is very, very good at it, very smart. It's very I just have a blast with it. I just have so much fun, and I hope it comes through how much fun I had in the studio making this. Basically, I don't think that you should ever go a minute in life without finding a reason to put a smile on your face. And I basically live my life with a smile the entire time, and I can't find it in myself to not be happy. I laugh a lot, and I'm very positive. I find things to smile about that other people die over. But there's destruction on Earth. I don't see why not bring about destruction. If there's a building, tear it down. If there's an old warehouse that nobody's using, burn it. Burn it. Burn that warehouse. If there's an old warehouse that nobody needs, why wouldn't you just go and burn that warehouse down? You need to deforest a forest for your own financial gain. Take out that forest, cut those trees down. If there's a skyscraper, blow it up. Do you understand? Are we moving the needle of technology in this country? Are we changing things? Are we doing things in the name of being progressive? If there's like a building that is just kind of around, maybe you should raise it. Maybe you should demolish it. Is my message coming across clearly enough for you? The brazen attitudes of the brazen and the brave-hearted. Don't forget about how brave those who are brave are. At the point that you don't remember, that you don't stick in your memory the efforts of the brave, is the point that you're culturally deficient. And your cultural deficiency will show, and it'll prevent you from being brave yourself. Don't forget about the brazen. Don't forget about the brave. The brave are it's seldom, it's rare. There's a scarce supply of the brave, and it's seldom that you would get to recognize somebody who's so brave that you would call their actions brazen. And Brazen Bran is a really good cereal that somebody could have made that nobody made. Just don't forget to recognize the actions of the brazen this morning, this afternoon, in your towns, in your country, in the counties, on the roadways. On the roadways, look to the person next to you when you're stopped at a stoplight. Give them a thumbs up and a smile and say, I do it for you. You're the brazen, not me. Just see braveheartedness in everybody except yourself this morning. The brave know more than you do. You don't know that much. Not as much as the brave. There's probably somebody braver than you who has more to say. You probably weren't brave enough. You woke up on the uncourageous side of the bed today, and probably every day. What are your efforts going towards? You're not brave. You're not Braveheart. You're not Mel Gibson. What are you? You're going to be Mel Gibson? Are you going to lead Scotland? Are you going to lead a whole nation against an authoritarian rule, against the ambitious rule of an England that pillages its citizens? Are you going to lead Scotland in the great fight against tyranny? Are you going to lead a whole Are you going to pick up a whole nation off of its knees and bring them to be standing in the sunlight? Are you going to be able to do that? Because if you're not, maybe you should leave it to the brazen. Maybe you need to recognize the brazen among you instead. Because the brazen are amongst you. And if you're not, I mean, but it's just that our words have the power to change the world. On any given Sunday, you can listen to the band Taking Back Sunday. On any given Sunday, you can. And that's what makes you brave, brave to me. If you're going to spend your Sunday, is that you're listening to Taking Back Sunday? Maybe you can listen to Armor for Sleep. I don't know. Maybe you can listen to Hawthorne Heights. Maybe. You could listen to Coheed and Cambria any given Sunday. I'm not sure. It's not my fault. Did you take some time to recognize the brave? Because maybe you're not being brave enough, you know? Maybe you're not being strong enough that you can't admit that somebody else is stronger than you. Maybe true strength is saying that you're just shit and you can't bravely do things. Did you recognize the heroes and the essential workers this afternoon? Because it's just that there are so many. The people who are brave usually have the authority to be that. It's usually the people that are brave. You should already recognize how much braver they are than you. It's really like brevity is recognizing that it exists outside of you, and it's for the essential workers, and it's for essentiality. But all jokes aside, this is a very serious broadcast, as you know, and everything. But I don't want to be like David Letterman and be like, you can't gain anything from this because I'm just a dimwit. David Letterman's like, well, you can't say that I know anything because I'm a fucking moron. And people who come, he treats all of his guests like you have to act like an idiot on his show. That's how David Letterman treats his guests. He's like, you have to know that you're not that great in order to make it here, or else he'll turn the entire audience against you. Because if you watch, I think it's called The Late Show with David Letterman. Is that what it's called? Those titles are all very similar, obviously. But if you watch the one that David Letterman does, it's just the entire audience reacts the same way that David Letterman does. They take on his energy, which is probably the way it works on all of those late night shows. But it's kind of like a cult that worships David Letterman. It's a secret society, and you used to have secret societies that were. There used to be a lot more strictness. Secret societies used to be more protected like that, where. But the kind of thing that I'm talking, so it's like, just let me stop for a minute to talk about David Letterman. Like, David Letterman did not get the Tonight Show. I probably explained this briefly at one time or another during some time in this podcast or the previous one called Identity. David Letterman didn't get the Tonight Show because he's not a winner enough. And I watched some of these interviews that Jay Leno did with David Letterman, where Jay Leno went on David Letterman in the 80s. And Jay Leno would just go on there and sort of disrespect Letterman as much as he wanted. But the thing is that Leno is actually above David Letterman's pay grade. 99+% of guests that would come on David Letterman, David Letterman could talk down to them like they were idiots and laugh at them and be like, oh, yeah, sure. Oh, that must have been tough. Yeah. Oh, that's a tough time there. As like all the actions and things that these people did in their regular life David Letterman can belittle it instantly because he's above most people's pay grade. But it's kind of like, for the time period, the two top people in the field of comedy were David Letterman and Jay Leno, circa 93, at the time that Carson left the Tonight Show, and then that spot was open because like the Tonight Show is basically the top spot in comedy. I think it's called The Tonight Show. I hope that that's not the one that Letterman does. All of those titles are so similar that I think it's The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. But then like Jimmy Fallon's is called Late Night. I think Letterman's is called The Late Show. But basically, when it gets down to two people like that, there's this extra caveat that you would need on your person as part of your persona, where you want to be a winner. And Jay Leno had that. David Letterman didn't. But it's like, in Jay Leno's interviews where he'd go on David Letterman, you could tell that Leno is above Letterman's pay grade. And just in those interviews, you can see this is why Leno gets the spot. And Jay Leno goes on Letterman's show and disrespects him to his face. Like, I was watching, there is an interview that I saw. Jay Leno gathered together these clips of Leno going on Letterman's show in the past, and like all these introductions that Letterman did for when Leno was going to walk out there. And David Letterman is like, this guy's a very funny comedian, he's the greatest, and is a friend of mine. He talks him up like you're allowed to do that or something, as if this thing isn't a competition. But it is. If you really wanted the Tonight Show, you would see it more as a competition. Jay Leno is going to go so far as to see it as a competition. That's why he's able to scheme his way to the top. But I'm saying all of this to correct for that people look at what Jay Leno did. They're like he stole the spot because he's just a jerk and he didn't deserve it. It's like he deserves it because he wants to win, and that's why he gets the Tonight Show. David Letterman is like, well, I'm a dimwit. I don't deserve to win anything, because he's just as competitive to actually get that high in comedy that he has. Like, he's competing for the Tonight Show. It's just that he treats being a common person with strictness and morality, because the kind of morality that David Letterman presents on his show, like, he has a stricter morality that he enforces on his guests, and his audience goes along with his version of morality whenever. And David Letterman's version of morality is that you have to be a commoner, which is like, you're trying to be a commoner, you're trying to be a man of the people. The person who is the most man of the people is the person that's going to get the Tonight Show. So it's like David Letterman is well on his way to being in the running, because he's very man of the people. Like, anything you do on TV doesn't matter. I'm just a bullshitter. Like, I'm just a commoner. But the problem is, the reason why he doesn't win is the way that he treats commonality, is that he acts like it's this moral thing where he strictly enforces it. And this is what he does to his guests. And when Jay Leno comes on, he wants to enforce his strict version of morality. And basically, Letterman and his audience turn on Jay Leno for any interviews that Jay Leno does on Letterman. But Leno knows this. But it's just like, Leno refuses to answer David Letterman's questions. And if you're not interested in this, then whatever, I guess you're not. But Letterman refuses to answer Jay Leno's questions when he's doing an interview with him on Letterman's show, and basically just goes into all of these bits that don't relate to his actual life. And Letterman keeps trying to tie Leno back to something he actually did to make it more personal, but Leno's like, no, I don't need to talk about any of that, because he just comes up with some other bullshit to make it not personal. And Letterman doesn't like that. That's against Letterman's morality, is that, like, well, you have to talk about yourself because we're all stupid here. You don't get to act like you're above everybody, that you have all these hot takes on things that make you, like, because that's not personal enough. Like, David Letterman is going to look at that and think that you're being somebody who's too concerned with money, basically, or something like that. That it's like, well, this commonality has to play out a certain way, but it's his rule, it's his strict sense of morality and his Indianapolis-ishness that he still centers himself in his Indiana identity, is unwilling to let go of that, which Jay Leno is willing to let go of where he came from, because he's a West Coaster. and West Coasters make it a point to not care about that kind of thing, but Midwesterners do make it a point to care about that I came from the Midwest, and everybody who's from Wisconsin often keep repeating that they're from Wisconsin more so than other states, more so than basically any other state that I could see from examples of anybody from different random people from different states being in the spotlight momentarily. Like strangers who aren't normally in the spotlight from Wisconsin often mention that they're from Wisconsin as if this is like one of the most defining and important things about them. Not everybody does that from every state, and they do it generally more so in the Midwest. But like West Coast doesn't give a shit about any of that, but it's like that less not having those rules that allows Jay Leno to fight his way to the top more. But he's like, I'm going to win. And basically, I saw one of these times when Leno went on Letterman's show, he disrespected him to the point of collecting all these clips of Letterman introducing Leno positively. And then he showed that on Letterman's show of Letterman talking up Leno. And then after that, Leno lit a cigarette, puffed it once, and left it on David Letterman's desk, still smoking, and just waited for Letterman's people to take it away. In this same interview where he collected all these clips of Letterman giving him these overly positive introductions, it was complete disrespect. Like, you can tell that Leno is in the game for the Tonight Show from far back, and he's rightfully treating it as a competition. This is evidence for why you should look at Leno as the rightful owner of the Tonight Show. Like, he completely deserved it in every way. Because schmucks like Conan O'Brien and David Letterman, the thing is, if you watch a Letterman interview with Conan O'Brien, Letterman is able to talk down to Conan O'Brien because both of these people are sort of boring. But Jay Leno is more interesting in and of himself, and Letterman really has nothing to say to him besides just watch him talk. And it's just like, of course, Conan O'Brien and Letterman are not going to make it there because they are too much concerned with saying that they themselves are shitty. Jay Leno has it in himself to be narcissistic enough to be like, no, I am better than other people. It's just that there's some people that already view themselves as better than other people, and it would be incorrect to act like that's not the case. But it's kind of like, Americans are so cool. Americans are real cool. And when Trump was elected president, the media has been propagandizing that Europe is smarter and better than America for years and years and years, and people don't really recognize this. And what this leads to is that people from Germany and England who have German and British accents come over here, and Americans think that they have to listen to them talk, but it's part of it is England has been propagandized to us from the media forever. It's like that you're supposed to uphold the sanctity of the royal family at all. Doesn't make any sense, but the media acts like this is very important, and it's there's a lot of the media giving credence to the United Nations is what I'm saying. Lots of publicity for Angela Merkel, and they act like leaders over there, they act like the United Nations is European countries and that America has nothing to do with it, but because they act like Europe is so much more progressive and intelligent and advanced than America, but it's really just what I'm talking about is this mentality that seeps into the country to Americans low and high level, where everybody's saying like, oh, people in other countries hate us because of how rich we are, that like people in other countries just want to kick our ass, like because we're so shitty, and then it makes America feels bad about themselves as a result, where there's this like paranoia that we build up as long as we're listening to like generally leftists that promote those kind of messages that are more aiming to destroy America. Like these kind of messages make it so that America is they think that they're just eating shit from every other country in the world because we're below them. Like they deserve to call us shitty because we're so, like, as if the entire world understands that America is a shitty country. And then as far as Americans, like this would make America feel guilty about itself if it played into this set of ideas. But it's like when Trump got elected, this is especially propagandized to us that Angela Merkel is way smarter and more progressive because whatever, like immigration. And it gets to the point that like people from other countries, to some extent, there's a lot of Americans would think that they would have to listen to them, and there are Europeans that come over and play that identity up because it's just kind of like this media driven narrative where, and something that we don't think about, where it's preached to us that America is not as good as the rest of the world, and especially like these European countries that are so much more advanced than us. And this is like propagandized to us through the media over and over and over again. And it's part of the reason why the Geico Gecko is able to be on TV and commercials for so long, and why nobody even points out is barely ever people even point out that he's British, because the reason that they use Gecko, that it's British, is because you're going to start paying attention to the ad because it's a British speaking gecko. But it's like still at the same time nobody's pointing out that he's British, or like that's the reason. But that's probably why they use it, is because people will probably start paying attention when it's a British person. And like it's part of it is just that the media acts like these countries outside of us are so much better than us, but that America is able to be guilted into anything at all because of the media. Like America is this larger media presence where I mean, America is more about the drama and thinks that it's more special than the rest of the world. And they're like, in to some regard, they're able to be guilted into things, but it's because there's some more specialized culture, and to some extent, it's like you need a more specialized culture. Like, America might maintain a more specialized state of things, status, because they want to be better, they want to create something, but it's like a more having a view of yourself that you're above other people is kind of what I'm talking about, is like more specialized. But that's what would allow you to invent things that are special in relation to your current level of invention across the world. But it's like if you see yourself as better than other people, this would allow you to create things that are better than what we have now, like to some extent. And that you would need a specialized culture to do that is not necessarily what it is. It's just that there's cockiness in the world, and like it's not like people have to pretend to feel like they're better than other people in order to feel that way. It's just that there are people that already think that they're better than other people. And like there are people that are already cocky. But like it's to the extent that if a British person comes over, like an actual British person appears in your home, you're supposed to like listen to them like, oh, they're British, like they have something to say. But it's kind of like Americans are entranced to this idea that British people are knowledgeable just because of the accent that they have, when the accent that they have is just like ultimately a cultural thing, that like people in England use their English accent to separate themselves from people in Ireland who use their Irish accent. It's like cultural, and the more that groups of people play into their cultures, is the more that they play up the accent, is the harsher that it's going to be. And like it's not like we listen to a Somalian when they're talking. We don't listen to them, and it's because the media propagandizes certain groups of people. They propagandize Europeans. They don't propagandize somebody in Africa, and it's to the point that like you hear somebody with a Somalian accent, you're actually just going to tune them out. And part of that is because the media over in America treats Africa like they are stupid, or they always talk about them like they are incapable of doing anything. And so Americans, as a result of that, it's this certain amount of it's racism that you don't even notice. Like how come nothing is spoken about the level of racism that causes Americans to listen to a British person but completely tune out? Like we don't stop and listen to a Mexican person when they're talking because of their Mexican accent. We don't stop and listen to that. But like British and German people are able to come over here and be like, I'm German, and then you're like, oh, they're German. I wonder what's going on there. But like a Somalian can't do that, because this country is racist, because we're like, and it's because you're not supposed to pay attention to that. And Americans police each other to this point, to say that you can't listen to a Mexican because you're not supposed to recognize their distinguished culture. Or Africans, people from Africa, they're not saying anything different, but it's like it causes you to not recognize this whole section of the world because the media tells you that they're unintelligent, and it's the most racist thing ever to not say that their culture is the same as English and Germans. But then there's this whole faction of Americans that love British people and act like they have so much more to say than everybody, including all other Americans, where they're like British comedy is better than American comedy and shit like that. It's like, why are you not foaming at the mouth over Botswana's culture? It's because of racism, and this kind of racism allows everybody to not recognize groups of people that, I mean, it causes you to not recognize them as much for whatever reason, because you can just write them off because for some reason it's been sold to us that the voice of a British person is more important. And is that a media-driven thing? I don't really know. It's just that Americans make it a point to be like, oh, no, that's a Mexican person. They're not different. They're basically white or something. But it's like indiscrimination that we're trying to push. Like, we got to end racism, and how far are we willing to go with that premise exactly? Like, are we really willing to end racism because but it's all these white people that are like, you know who the privilege belongs to? Whites. It's whites have all the privilege, blacks don't. Like, that's the most racist thing ever, to say that white people have all the privilege, but you are not a racist when you promote that white people have all the privilege. And then you can't say the word ghetto, and what does that do for anybody? Fucking nothing. Oh, okay, we stopped saying ghetto. That made it. Now people in the ghetto, all their problems are fixed because we stopped saying the thing that they lived in. Now that we convinced everybody to call that the bad area of town, equality financially has been obtained. Everybody has the same finance. Everybody has been lifted out of their poverty because we stopped saying the word ghetto. It's a miracle. How amazing. And that people are promoting that, but I'm just talking about oh, we have all the white people have all the privilege. And that's good for whites that they got all of the privilege. That's interesting that they got all of that. But are we really willing to go so far as to end racism and completely get rid of it? Like, you want to make it so that we don't recognize differences in cultures? Like black people aren't talking different or using different words. They're not different. They're just like white people. But it's white people that promote this mentality where you're supposed to see all ways of talking. You can't even say like black people have an accent. You can't say that accent because that's cultural appropriation. But it's really like, it's appropriate. It is appropriate to recognize. It's appropriate to recognize what is actually going on, because it is appropriate. It's an appropriate enough way of explaining it, really, that black people have an accent, they have a way of talking. But if you really want to end racism, then we're not even going to recognize any differences here. We're like, oh, but it's a kind of mentality that says that you're supposed to look at black people and call them white, basically. It's like, no, they're not talking differently. They're talking like whites do, or like Mexicans aren't talking differently. They're talking the way that whites talk. Like, you're really willing to go that far, then you can throw all of Dave Chappelle's material out the window, because all of his material is based on recognizing differences between races. And I thought that we appreciated that. I thought that we praised that. I thought that we admired that, recognizing differences. I thought that the great thing about America was that it was a melting pot with all these different cultures. You really want to go so far as to end racism, you're saying that there's going to be no, you don't recognize any differences, that black people do this because they're different or anything like that. You're like, it would be to the point that there aren't any black people talking like black people anymore. If you really want to make it so that everybody recognizes all languages and all races to be exactly the same, then there won't be this cultural there won't be a melting pot of where you get to recognize differences in cultures and how they contribute to the whole thing. And what's, you don't get to appreciate different people, and you don't get to appreciate differences at all. You really want to go so far as to end racism, then that's like, that basically cuts out all, every prominent comedian over the last 20 years has a bit about racism, and that bit is based on recognizing differences in races. Like, some people act like they want to end racism so that there aren't any more white people who try to pretend to be black, but it's basically like there would also be no more, you can't recognize any differences, you're not like specifically like cultural differences. The end of racism is complete indiscrimination, and to some extent, indiscrimination allows for a very racist environment, because at the point that everybody is completely indiscriminate would be the point that people said the most racist things possible, because they'd be like, oh, like, they'd just be like, oh, they would just say, I don't know, at the point that you're completely indiscriminate, you're going to be looking at a black person and calling their actions white or something. Like, that would be cultural equating. The thing that I'm saying is that I kind of like the racism. I think that it's profitable. I think that it's good. I enjoy it. I like to recognize differences. I like and I like the humor of it, and it's more comical and it's more fun. I think that you would go wrong to try to call everybody the same. That doesn't help. It doesn't help, and it doesn't make people feel appreciated, and it doesn't create a better world, because yeah, we want to live in a world where nobody is recognized for who they are or something. That's my 2 bits and pepper. It's a horse movie. I'm retarded. That's my 2 bits and pepper for that. If you know what that movie is, I'm sorry. Sorry that I... But what is there to be sorry about today? There's I'm telling you about culturally and culture. But culturally, the distinction is that when your culture wears away, it's a detachment from morality. Don't let your culture deteriorate morally. Don't let moral deterioration invade you. Invade your culture, because then your culture will disintegrate. If you don't want your culture to dissolve, if you don't want your culture to deteriorate, then you're going to have to uphold and maintain the structural boundaries. And that's true. And people are getting all up in arms about cancel culture. But here's what I find about cancel culture is that I feel like I'm often trying to figure out what people are exactly talking about. And because the thing is, people are getting worked up about cancel culture, but they're worked up like it's kind of like, if you're too far right, you emphasize cancel culture like it's this bigger problem than it is. And cancel culture is not as big of a problem as it sounds, or as people make it out to be. And also, like, the whole thing about racism is just something that people should ignore. But obviously the problem is that there's some people that can't ignore the consequences they reap for sounding racist, because they get canceled. And the problem is that there's some CEO or higher up person in management that got canceled because of racist remarks, because a crowd of people are like, you can't sound racist, and then the company gives into criticism. Part of the problem is an adherence to criticism and critics. It's like, it's not so much canceling that's the problem, it's that people believe critics, that there's like a crowd of people yelling, and then a company gives into that. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, it was too racist, because a company doesn't give a fuck about racism enough to actually fire their employees, because you fire an employee, you lose money. And that's why this thing only affects higher level management people or people in the public eye. It's basically only public figures that cancel culture affects. Like, and what I'm saying is that I don't know anybody that lost their job because they made racist remarks or made sexist remarks, because I don't know anybody that's like a high up at people who are at some general job status, like general level of job across the country. Like, they're not getting fired because the rest of the country doesn't care about them enough, because they're not in the public eye. Nobody can raise a ruckus or develop a crowd around some common level, regular level of worker, and nobody does. And so cancel culture doesn't affect people who are living a regular life, and most people are living a regular life. And but this is like, it's only public figures that are coming out and really freaking out about cancel culture. As public figures come out and publicly make statements about cancel culture, the people that are the most afraid of it are already it only affects like public figures. Public figures can get canceled. Like, cancel culture is a cancellation of publicity as much as it is a cancellation of anything, but it's because of a deterioration of publicity that cancel culture is a problem. But this is what public figures are complaining about, basically. And I've sort of explained this, or I've sort of said this before, is that there's a cancellation of popularity, of popular culture, and it has to do with that environments aren't able to be specialized anymore like they used to be. Like, David Letterman, at the time that he did his Late Show, that was a more specialized environment with its own rules, and this, like, a secret society developed around David Letterman. And David Letterman, for his part, pointed the spotlight to other secret societies, other people in positions of authority, as himself being part of the structure, and the whole authoritarian structure was more in place and structurally sound 10 years ago. And the kind of thing I'm talking about is that when 9/11 happens, David Letterman comes out, that like his first show after it, and he's like, I didn't know what to do, and anytime that I felt worried or didn't know where to look, I looked to Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani is this strong pillar. Like, he's the leader that we needed, and I would have just been mush if it weren't for his leadership or something. But basically, he said that he just propagandized the political structure. He's like, well, you know who you can look to? Politicians. You, in times of strife, you got to look to politicians, because, and it's like in the year 2001, that's entirely what everybody believed, is that like politicians are our saviors. But like, you look to Rudy Giuliani, look to the mayor of the city, the guy who leads the city. But it's like, well, obviously, but that's the kind of way David Letterman is kind of leftist like that, where he's going to excuse, abnegate his authority to the leader, to the authority that deserves it more, because he doesn't see it in himself to be his own authority, which is why he doesn't get the Tonight Show. But he's basically going to go look at Rudy Giuliani, and like the what was I saying? There's a deterioration of specialization is a deterioration of American culture. Americans generally make it a point to be a more specialized environment than other countries. This is why they're more moralistic and more Christian than Europeans are. But like, public figures are worried about this, but essentially the internet deteriorates specialized instances at a rapid rate. Like, the internet weaves its way into anything that would try to be upholding itself as special, and kind of equates everybody to the same level. Like, a family is a specialized instance, as opposed to a family a family that gets divorced. And then, because at the point that a family gets divorced, then everything is more open for the family. When the parents stay together, it's a specialized instance, because basically, as long as that family unit is together, they adhere to a certain sense of morality specific to the family. Like, I would say that morality is specific to the church, like Christian churches or whatever church. Like, church to church, your sense of morality is different. Pastor to pastor, the sense of morality is at least slightly different, because each church plays out differently, and that's why they attract different crowds of people, is because different people like different things, and some messages are more popular than others, and then those churches are bigger. Like some messages are a more watered down version of Christianity, but like it is a deterioration of morality that it contributes to cancel culture. But I'm I'm speaking of it as if because I would say cancel culture is just culture is the problem. It's a culture is going away, but it's harder to maintain specialized instances because all the information has been thrown into the same communal pot, and it kind of makes everybody the same through the internet. But it's like a deterioration of morality and religion and Christianity's messages. It's difficult to distinguish them from the world sometimes, and more so it's like Christianity is more like the world, but to some extent it would have to do with divorces. But like the kind of thing that I'm saying is that a family is a specialized unit, and it provides for this sheltered incubation period for the children, so they grow up in a more specialized environment than if your parents get divorced. Then the kids are more open to the rest of the world. Then the kids are given more over to the world's interpretation of them because they're just given more over to that when they're not captured in this specialized family unit. Because I'm saying like pastor to pastor morality is different, but I would say it extends all the way to the family, because really family to family the sense of morality is different. Whatever is going on family to family, but a family unit but at this point the internet weaves its way into any family and destroys them. Like no family can shelter their kids from the moral corruption they would receive through the internet. But I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I think that it's not a bad thing for you to end up being more open to the rest of the world, that you break free of a closed enclosed space and within a given family, because what you then grow up in is a specialized environment, specific to a certain thing, and like you're going to practice more so the same thing rather than be open to many different things. And so I guess there's something to be said about spending your whole life like getting good at one task versus spending your whole life open to many different tasks. But open to many different tasks, I guess, makes you more common. And like it's just that you can't be popular anymore. It's public figures that are freaked out about the deterioration of culture, and so it's like it's really not that big a deal. Besides that, if it's a public figure that's getting canceled, and if they do, they deserved it, because if you're not going to bounce back after a crowd of people insult you profoundly for a short period of time, if you're not bouncing back after that, then you deserve to be canceled. But because you shouldn't be worried about cancel culture, because we live in a world now that you are more and more popular based on your merit, rather than that you got there by sleeping your way to the top, or by getting lucky, or by making your whole life about visibility and appearances. And it's like people wouldn't often recognize that Christians are a little bit like celebrities, and that celebrity culture is for celebrated figures, and they participate in the religion of being celebrated, and Christians participate in the religion of being celebrated more in an eternal sense. But like both of these are like a celebrity Hollywood environment is a specialized environment to some extent. But you live in a world where your popularity is more based on your own merit, then you deserve the visibility you get. And the people who truly get canceled probably just didn't deserve the visibility, because, it's just that I don't see how I would be upset on behalf of Shane Gillis for getting fired from SNL for making some remarks about Asians, because you're already playing the game of being in the public eye. All these people that get canceled you're already bringing this upon yourself by going into the public eye at all. Like you would expect some of that to happen. Shane Gillis making slightly racist remarks continually if you make a podcast, like that comes with the territory. And that you don't get a job that already exists you don't get a public position that you're trying to get as a result of living a public life already, because that makes it so that people can publicly throw a lot of shade on you. Like that comes with the territory. You have to deal with that kind of thing. It's just like cancel culture is not to be worried about, especially because it's 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 always public figures that are freaked out about it, and they're the ones who deserve it. You deserve to be canceled to some extent. Like that's the point, is refuting criticism as best you can. And like you're gonna act like the critics don't have a voice. It's the world needs to evolve to come up with an answer to critics, to say that critic as an identity, you don't deserve to be that. But like you grew up in a specialized family, the parents provide a canopy for you that is like then you stick to that religion, and then but it's kind of just more, it's kind of more like if your parents stay together, then you have to repay them, basically. Like they paid the price, they did the right thing, they stayed together the whole time, so now you have to be close to your parents forever. And it's people whose parents stay together that are close with their parents. But and it's like it's just this moralistic thing that you have to stick with a sense of morality at all. It's your parents sticking together is just a microcosm of a church. I think your family that sticks together is a microcosm of a church, because they stuck together for the purpose of maintaining a more sacred environment, where it's like this family has to be a family to maintain the structure of a family. And it's just that by itself, I'd say, is like a church, because you're saying there's all these rules, and the rules are going to be based on a given family's version of morality, but they create this more sheltered environment for their kids, and then their kids always live in the shadow of their parents, more so if their parents stay together, because it's like that's part of the thing, is that you stay together, and that's a more difficult route, and then you get repaid, because your kids never you make it so your kids never break free from you if you never get a divorce, basically. Like, because that's the environment you created, is one where the parents are always worshipped for upholding the environment. Like the parents are the monarchs of they get to be that rightfully, as long as they maintained the kingdom for forever. I mean, it's generally the way that it works, because there's a lot more that opens up to you at the point that you don't have to be like, I have to listen to my parents. At the point that you would get to recognize your parents as fallible is the point that there's a lot more that you get to see and do in the world. Like you don't have, and parents are often dragging their families into religions where and those religions reinforce that you have to listen to your parents, especially like a Christian religion. Honor your father and mother. Like that's the whole point, is that, like, why wouldn't parents bring their kids into a place that's going to tell them those messages? You have to honor your parents. Like it's not like you want to dishonor your parents. I'm just saying you should be able to treat your parents like you treat anybody else. That there's a specialty that they deserve. You would only think they deserve it if you are in the business of continually recognizing the specialized environment that they created for. But I'm just saying, like, you should be able to treat your parents like they're anybody else. I don't think that special reverence for them just because they had kids. Like, I'm saying that it's not moral to have kids. It's not like you're doing the right thing to have kids, or it's not doing the right thing. But where I come from, that makes me a degenerate for saying that kind of thing. But where I come from, it's the whole thing with Christianity. Not the whole thing. One of the things that they like to emphasize is that that pride goeth before the fall, and it's that whole message is just that God will obliterate you at the point that you are cocky. It has to do with cockiness, and refuting the idea that there are people that are cocky. It's just that some people are actually cocky, and it's not like something you pretended to be, and so because of your artificiality, you're deserving of punishment, which is kind of the way that it's treated. Is that like, well, anytime that you think that you're important or special, anytime that you think that you're important, like individually at behest of the family or at behest of the church, anytime you think you're individually important, then God's going to obliterate you for thinking that you're something. So it's just a war on cockiness. And it's something like Christian church doesn't really like men or that kind of thing. But it's just that there are people, like, cockiness already happens, and the people that are cocky are pretending to be that, and they already pay the price for. They are like people who are cocky already pay the price for being that, and they would have gotten used to it. Like that's the point, is that you take these risks that you put yourself in over your head because you believe in yourself too much. You're going to naturally pay the price for that, and so it's not this matter of don't even try, because think about how you're going to fall, because you probably will screw up if you're extra cocky and take lots of risks, and you'll look like an idiot. But the point is that if you're naturally already going to do that, you're going to ignore how much you look like an idiot in order to keep going towards what you wanted that causes you like so I'm saying that the people who think that they're better than other people, or just like more braggadocious, or just going to maintain something about themselves. This is just an attitude that lots of people have, and it's not like. But Americans kind of view this in like America versus the rest of the world, where like, well, Americans are often too cocky, and the rest of the world hates us, and we're fuck ups as a result, and the rest of the world gets to shit on us because we're wrong for thinking that we're better. But it's like, if you are able to create a world like as if people can't do things individually, if you're going to create a world like I'm talking about specialization arriving at the level of the individual, rather than because a family that's almost like an individual. And so there's nothing wrong with a family's level of a speciality, that they would like maintain something about themselves, because a family can stay together and can still live in complete humility too. But like, then that's their thing, that's their version of morality, or that's what they find important about. That's their interpretation of family, is one that is enduringly humble. That's like but it's like your family's morality is your interpretation of a family, is like, this is what it should look like. So there's nothing wrong with that. And what you instill in your kids, like maybe it's better to be a specialized environment, but in some respects it isn't, and it depends on if you like more openness or greater variety, acceptance of many different people, or an acceptance of a more specialized life where you. But I'm getting off topic. Like that, when specialization arrives at the level of the individual, then you're just a religion for yourself. But I'm talking about being able to see yourself as God, and religions that don't want individuals to see themselves to have the power to do things are going to tell you that cockiness is the greatest evil, and you'll just get destroyed for it. But 53 minutes. All right, that's it. No, not really. That can't be it. That can't be all. I have more to say. I have so much more to say. But people in Ohio call soda pop, and people in Wisconsin call it soda. It's because people in Ohio are more. They act like they're adults, and they scoff at sugary drinks like pop. That's why they call it pop. is to ridicule it. And it's like Ohioans, when they drink soda, they make it a point to call it pop, and some of them are even like, oh yeah, did you get your pop? Like, it's always maintained that we're above pop. Like, people in Ohio are above that, and they ridicule it, they scoff at it by calling it pop and stuff, because pop is more demeaning. Soda normalizes it. Soda is like this fun thing, like it's a possibility for you if it's soda, like there's nothing wrong with it. It's like calling it soda legitimizes it so much more. But people in Ohio call it pop because they're like, oh, you want to drink your childish sugary drinks, and people in Wisconsin are more childish. I don't know, but Ohio likes to act like it's adult. Really, they like to act like they are jaded and above things to some extent. And so they're like, oh, that's pop. You can drink your pop. But just by being here long enough, it's like in my head I think of that thing as pop, whereas I used to only think of it as soda. It's like I wouldn't call it pop, but it's just kind of like I mean, I get it, but it's like so I'm thinking in a different language. Because pop just sounds stupid if you don't realize that people use it to say that it's to demean it. Like, pop just sounds dumb, but I mean, at the point that you're above that thing, I could see where that would be a preferred option for some people. For some folks. Some folks might find that preferred. Maybe it's the brazen. Just love the brazen. Fall at their feet. You're not the brazen. Give credit to the brazen. You're not essential. How about calling essential workers like doctors? It's like, who's an essential worker? As far as you know, visibly speaking, it's doctors. And most people in the world are not doctors. It's just like anybody who has a desk job is not essential. But I guess I'm not essential. You're not an essential person. It's just propagandizing the medical community by a media that wants to tell you that they have all the authority. And all the authorities at this point in time are, for some reason, aligning themselves so that you can just call all of them authority. Like, they're more and more coming out into the open as authorities, like, just based on that you can poke holes in what they're saying they have authority over. But it's because we live in this world. It's because we live in this world, it's just like this world has just like these problems. But it's just like this world, though, when you live in this world, and then it's there's people in Africa in this world, but it's like we talk about Africans like they don't exist a little bit. The media does. And what the point that I was making was that before I started to try to have my own fun, was we live in this world that, it's just this world. You need to recognize the brazen, the essential workers, the essentiality, and all the authorities are aligning themselves to say, like, we're just authorities. But it's like, what Bill Gates does is he destroys medicine by making because now people who are conspiracy theorists, very far right ones, are effectively able to instill a fear of hospitals into people, because really we don't know what's going on in hospitals. All of a sudden we're like, well, we're generally more feared just of hospitals at all at this point. And it's because people like Bill Gates come along, and ultimately his legacy is that he destroys medicine by showing it, revealing it to be an authority. But the world is more and more making it so that your options for drugs are endless, and by the day you're able to obtain things because businesses, it's like pharmacy is breaking down to some extent, because you're more and more able to get any vitamin and nutrient just through just by purchasing it. Like, pharmacy seems to be less and less able to maintain an authority, at least to some degree, because there's so many, you can buy all of these drugs that are like alpha brain or whatever, and then it's like a methamphetamine that is sold to you as a series of nutrients or something. But like what it does is like does for your brain is wire you up like crazy drugs would do. You don't know what you like, but there's all the. It's just that the options for drugs are so plethora that they're so abundant, many different drugs, such a variety that people can be their own doctors more and more. But if it gets to the point that they're just making a pill for anything, like at some point in the future, there will just be a pill for all the things that you need, and you'll just be able to buy all of it. And this leads to the deterioration of medicine. Besides that, medicine digs itself into a hole by everybody being like, what the fuck is going on at these hospitals that they give everybody has to take a vaccine that they didn't research and now everybody is against. And it like Joe Biden's like, okay, well, we're gonna make vaccines mandatory for everybody, and then the entire country was like, no, I don't think so. You're not gonna do that. And I think that's pretty amazing. That is a referendum of the people towards totalitarianism. That they're like, no, we're not gonna do it. And so that's tough for likes of Bill Gates, but it's like Bill Gates just basically creates this fear of hospitals. So people are more and more just like, what happens if I go into the hospital? Are they just going to wire me up with drugs that they're like, because they're a doctor, they get to inject me with anything? Because it's kind of the way that it plays out some places. And Alex Jones is out here preaching that these hospitals are just going to kill you to take your organs, or they're just like needlessly killing people all the time. It like hospitals are, and I know this like an Alex Jones sort of promoted message, but whether you like it or not, Alex Jones is a 4chan for conservative thought, and what he says ages well and just becomes conservative popular thought more and more so over time. Like that's where conservative political thought originates, is people like him. And he is painting hospitals as places of death, and this is seeping into the culture, and people are just more and more afraid of hospital. He's saying like hospitals needlessly kill you because for money, or because that's the way that they do things, or like doctors are told that they have to do this and they don't want to lose their job or whatever. And it might be true. It might just be that the state of things in hospitals has gotten to a point where protocol and bureaucracy causes them to do all these things that are against the grain of what is healthy for people, against what is actually the most helpful. Like it could be the case that the bureaucracy of hospitals, I wouldn't be surprised, the bureaucracy of hospitals is leading them to make a lot of choices that are just in the benefit of the hospital rather than the people that they're taking care of. This is basically what happens at many levels of government. But that was something that I said, all of that. And there you go. Make sure that you worship the brazen. Give them buy them some flowers, because if you don't recognize the brave, you will always be weak. If you don't say that other people are more brave than you, why don't you get like a $50 gift card to Chili's for the bravest person you know? Because they're very brazen. And you're not always going to get the opportunity to recognize brazenness like that in somebody else. That you might get them a $100 gift card to Wendy's. Get them a $300 gift card to Burger King. Because they're brave. Because they're strong. Because they're stronger than you are. Whoever is stronger than you are, they set the standard for strength, and you can't meet that standard. Strength is only given to the very strongest. And if you're not that, fall at their feet, worship them. You're not strong if you're relatively weaker than somebody else that you know. It's only the bravest among us, and you're not that. Give credit to the brave, and live your life in their shadow. Live your life in the shadow of the brave, because they're the ones who have shadows that deserve to be lived in. If you're being recognized for something when you notice that somebody else is to be more recognized than you, shit on yourself until you're out of existence, so you don't have to think about that you would be recognized for anything. Love the brazen, praise the brazen, um, give them gifts, adorn them with many crowns, adorn them with jewels and perfumes from ancient lands. You know, like Jesus the baby in the manger received gifts. Make a pilgrimage to Persia and collect a few artifacts that are worthy of worthy to be put into the hands of the brazen. And make that your goal. Like, if you haven't done that, if you haven't given enough time to recognize those among you who are worthy of being recognized, then you're probably living a really shitty life. Just kidding. Goodbye.